So, we've got another one. And by another one, I mean another good-ass game. Yep, I can hear the views going down already. Anyways, Roblox 64 is a phenomenal game. And if you haven't played it already, I highly recommend it. It's not a super long game. I 100%ed all of the current content in about an hour and a half, but it is an hour and a half of strictly enjoyable gameplay. This is one of the few games where I honestly have very little criticism about the game. Not that there isn't any, and we'll definitely be talking about that, but for the most part, this game is just really solid. Now, in case you live under a rock, you might be able to easily tell that Roblox 64 is heavily inspired by Super Mario 64, hence the title. That being said, despite the similarities, I do think that they almost sort of did themselves a disservice by mimicking Super Mario 64's title so heavily. Number one, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, Super Mario 64 was called Super Mario 64, not because it was a 3D platformer, but because it was on the Nintendo 64. This is on Roblox, number one, and number two, not all 3D platformers need to be Super Mario 64, right? That being said, the gameplay mechanics are basically identical in terms of functionality to Super Mario 64, so I suppose in that sense it makes sense. The movement in Roblox 64 is fantastic, and thank God for that because, well, the gameplay in this game is the movement. Movement is the game. Your goal in any given level is pretty self-explanatory. You're supposed to explore the level, parkour around, and pick up player points. When you obtain enough of them, they'll unlock the next world. Simple stuff. In order to obtain these different player points, you'll be tasked with doing a variety of different things. Whether it be picking up 8 little miniature player points in a level in order to make one appear, completing any given parkour challenge, or reaching great heights, as well as going into bonus levels or potential 2D sections that also have player points hidden within. I don't have much more to say on gameplay because, well, that just is the gameplay. And if it sounds simplistic or like it won't hold your attention, that can't be further from the truth because, as I said earlier, the movement in this game is great. The people who made the game very clearly did their homework to make sure that the game felt great to play. I even noticed some sort of industry standard tricks when it comes to platformers in this game that a lot of people won't take notice of that further emphasizes the point that these people knew what they were doing. To give you an easy example, a lot of platformers will make their platforms slightly larger than the visual representation in order to make it so if you go to run off a platform and jump, there's not an extremely strict window, because this can make it feel like your inputs are sometimes being dropped. And you can see a direct example of this being shown on screen right now. It may look weird if you're going extremely slow that I'm literally standing off the edge of the platform, but this is done by design in order to make sure that, like I said, it doesn't feel like your inputs are being eaten. It works with absolutely resounding success, considering the fact that there was literally not one singular instance where I was playing this game where I failed some sort of section or messed up and didn't feel like it was directly my fault. I felt 100% in control the entire time. It's attention to detail things like that, or the fact that the music mutes itself slightly when you go underwater, that really makes it clear to me that the people who made this game cared a lot about it. Now, all of the praise aside, as I said earlier, the game does have some problems. None of them so massive that they'll take away from your enjoyment, but they exist nonetheless, and I would be remiss not to mention them. Number one is the fact that at current there are 2 characters that you can switch between, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why you would ever want to do this. This seems to me like it was maybe a decision made in order to have interesting gameplay mechanics, but then the developers realized that, hey, if we do this, then we're going to have a large problem in that you're going to have to constantly switching back and forth between characters in order to get different things, and that can get tedious. So instead, both characters are very largely the same, with the female character seemingly being significantly better than the male one. I have no idea if this is actually true, just the way that I felt while playing. And that stems mostly from the fact that the female Robloxian has a double jump, and the male one has this sort of hovering move, and the double jump is just way better. So once I figured that out, I just never switched back to the male variant at any point. So yeah, I don't even know why the character switching is here if there's seemingly no point of it. Another problem that I ran across was in terms of the music. Now, as a content creator, a lot of the time I'll disable music for games just because, well, I need to put in my own music after the fact. But when it came to this game, I decided that I was going to leave the music on, just because trying to play platformers with no music is a special level of awkward, and unfortunately, I ended up having to do that anyway because of the issue that I'm about to address. I assume that the music used for this game is an original soundtrack made by the developers or commissioned by the developers at the very least. And I assume that because the last 2 levels of the game don't have special music. And this is a real problem. The reason it's a real problem is because the music already in of itself is not a very long loop. It's not bad, and it gives life to the game and makes it consistently more enjoyable to play just by being present, but the hub music in particular feels like it's sort of grating. And that's a real problem because the last 2 levels of the game, since they don't have music, the developers just made it so that it uses the hub music. I don't think this is a bug on my end, considering that if I went back to other levels, their music would render in just fine. So I didn't want to listen to the hub music for the next 20 to 30 minutes, so I just turned off the music. And well, you remember how I was saying it's awkward? Just listen to this. Yeah, it's very, very strange. And the next issue is sort of a double-edged sword, and that's just how much freedom that you have in this game. Normally, freedom is a really good thing, but sometimes too much freedom is actually working to a game's hindrance. What do I mean by this? Well, because of the game's easily exploitable movement mechanics, which is not a bad thing, they're meant to be experimented around with and abused to try to get to different places potentially faster than the intended route, but sometimes the unintended side effects of that are you getting to areas of the level that you're clearly not intended to get to. On World 1, you can get all the way to the top of the hub world, which I assumed would have something up here, and, well, there's nothing, which is just awkward. If there's nothing up there, then it seems weird to even be able to get up there to begin with. This, in of its own right, is not that big of a problem, obviously, but it does become a problem in this specific scenario. I was in the ice world and I went into a bonus level, and the gimmick on this level is supposed to be that it's covered by a dense blizzard that limits visibility. Now, while trying to get through this level, I accidentally stumbled myself onto the edge of the level. And once I was on the edge of the level, I just skirted the edge all the way around until I found the player point in the bonus level and left. So I didn't interact with the entire level, and it's not like it was interesting that I wasn't interacting with the entire level. I just walked across the entire edge of the map. And so sometimes when things like that happen, it's just very strange. Nowhere near game breaking, like I said, it's not the end of the world, but it's just something that I noticed. Oh, and I almost forgot, the last sort of negative thing that I have to say about the game is the enemy variety. This is sort of awkward because the first, second, and third level all have enemies. In the first level, you have these little box guys that come at you that are basically child's play to deal with. In the second level, and I guess technically the first level too, there are fish that just sort of swim around and, you know, if you hit them, you take damage. And then in the third level, you have the most interesting enemy by far, which is these soda cans that lock onto your position and then fire at you. These are definitely the hardest enemies in the game and the most interesting to deal with. The problem is that after this point, there are no more enemies. The last 2 levels in the game just don't have any. And I don't know, that just strikes as weird to me. Especially the last level, which should in theory be the most difficult level, but it doesn't have any enemies. I don't know, it's just weird. Regardless, none of these negative things nearly take enough away from the game to make me even remotely consider it not worth playing. It's just oozing with charm, whether it be the signposts that have witty messages on them, or the people themselves in the world that you can talk to, where your own character has conversations with them, or the fact that the game is always consistently adding new gimmicks every single level in order to freshen up the gameplay. Whether it be ice mechanics, that aforementioned blizzard from earlier, lava, new types of enemies. They're always shaking things up. Overall, I hope the developers continue working on this game because I think it has a lot of merit and some really good legs to stand on. It's a shame that there isn't more here, and that's probably my biggest complaint, that there isn't more for me to play. Regardless, I don't think I have anything else that I have to say about the game, so we're wrapping up here. If you like platformers whatsoever, this is far and above better than any of those no-effort crappy Roblox obbies, so give it a shot. If you don't have interest in platformers, I still recommend giving it a shot because, hey, you might enjoy it. Anyways, with all that being said, I'm done here, so if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.